Thanks for tuning in, guys. You're listening to Ace Comicals. I'm Greg Driver. I'm joined by Rahul Jani and Leon Everett. Let's go! Hello, friends, and welcome to Ace Comicals episode number 55. And we've got a fair bit to get through from the past couple of weeks, or at least I have, because I've been doing a lot of reading. So I'm joined by my usual co-hosts, Rahul.
Hey, guys.
And Leon.
Hey.
And I guess we should just dive straight into it. So, past couple of weeks, let's get the formalities out of the way where we talk about the other media before we actually get to the juicy bit, the comics. So, I have been watching Punisher Season 2 because that's a thing and that's out now. And I've sort of gotten round to it and I've been making my way through it and I've got like one episode left. Have either of you two watched Punisher Season 1?
No.
No, I'm super behind on the TV Marvel stuff.
Yeah, same.
Okay. Well,
when I say super behind, I mean I've watched none of it except for Jessica Jones, I think.
Oh, you should at least watch Daredevil.
Yes, I know. I'm well aware of this. That's on my list of shame.
Yes, Daredevil. But speaking of Daredevil, actually, I'll come to that when I get to the pull list, because we've got a new Daredevil #1 coming on Wednesday, which I'm quite excited about. It's got Mr. Chip Zdarsky's name attached to it. But, yeah, so Punisher Season 2, which is actually really, really good. It builds on Season 1, perfectly. I really like where it goes, and I like the story that it's telling. And I like this version of the Punisher, this kind of side of him that they're showing through this story, where obviously, you know, what they're trying to do is, while providing you, the viewer, the catharsis and the stress relief that comes with watching action movies and people get blown up and shooting and things like that, you also, in the truly ugly parts of the show, where there's because there is some really hard violence in this show. You actually it's showing that it's actually, you know, maybe these thoughts that if you've had these thoughts of when you're angry. I don't know if you two have ever experienced that, but when you're angry, you get thoughts of vengeance and things like that, and you start to feel you know. But it's good having that on TV and showing you that it's actually quite a bad thing to think like that, and that it's a bad path to go down, and it's unhealthy and everything else. And this is a way of it being out in the world without, I don't know. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, it's I guess seeing it in all its HD glory, you see how sort of pathetic and isolationist it is, as well as obviously very, very dark. Yes.
And that's the side of the Punisher that I quite like what they're doing, where, you know, yes, people believe in him still, and what, you know, he ultimately has a code, but he's not really a very nice person. And that comes across quite well, and I quite like that.
He's ultimately not a very happy person generally in his stories, right? No. That's the whole thing. It's a spiral of destruction and a spiral of violence, and he never really gets his satisfaction from it. Yeah, destruction begets destruction and whatever else. But he the way they do Frank Castle is that even after taking the life of everybody involved in the death of his wife and kids, he's still hollow. He's still got nothing. He still hasn't been he's come to the end of his revenge spree, and whatever he thought he was going to get out of it, he didn't, you know. And I like that. I like that they're showing that they're showing that it's a bad way to go, that it's a bad path to go down, that you shouldn't be like that. That, you know, this stuff has to come to an end. You can't, you know, you can't be that person. Yeah, and how do you unring that bell, right?
Exactly, yeah. How do you unring that bell? And that's what's great about it, the fact that I can watch it and it's kind of it's stress relief watching things blow up and whatever else. And it's stress relief in the same way that listening to Slipknot is stress relief, because Slipknot, they have some really choice lyrics, and there's some really violent imagery within Slipknot's
discography and whatever, but it's stress relief. It's like putting your face in a pillow and shouting really loud, allowing yourself to fall into that world for a little while, and then also understanding how bad it actually is to think like that, and that it's unhealthy, and then that kind of calms you down ultimately, if that makes sense.
So you've been having a good week then, have you, Greg?
Yeah. As good as anyone's.
Glad you've had your catharsis.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's just how I view the Punisher and how I think it works, and and the same way that metal works for me, Punisher works, and it's good like that because it's big, it's loud, it's ridiculous, it's ugly in places, but it's great. And I fully recommend seasons 1 and seasons 2 because they are really good, especially if you like things like The Raid.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, if you like The Raid, this is basically The Raid, but split over 13 episodes. So that kind of level of violence, basically, and that kind of level of action.
Does the level of action match the quality of something like The Raid or the initial Daredevil seasons? Because I've seen the long take action sequences that were really good in Daredevil season 1.
Easily matches Daredevil in places, easily. Okay. And probably not quite the same level as The Raid in that way, but it easily kind of comes to easily shoulder to shoulder with Daredevil.
Yeah, because beyond just the general catharsis of seeing angry dudes be angry and violent, there is something to the spectacle of the cinema of it all, and seeing motion in action, seeing stuff in action, really tightly scripted and tightly paced and tightly planned and really beautifully shot. That has its own level of catharsis and enjoyment to it as well. So I mean, I'm sure there's different levels to this beyond just the violence.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's what I'm trying to get across. That I'm not some psychopathic nutcase. I just enjoy violent shows occasionally. Yeah, it's pretty cool. There's a couple of things still on my list that I've come out over the past couple of weeks that I haven't watched yet. Things like Russian Doll and Polar, which are still things for me to sort of plough through.
Since you mentioned it, Russian Doll is fantastic. It's so good. I rarely binge TV shows, but me and Anna, we watched that in one day, and it's 8 episodes, and they're only half an hour each, or 24 minutes, or whatever it is each.
Okay.
And we just we sat down and watched it over the course of 4 or 5 hours. It's unbelievable. And I don't want to really say what the premise is. I don't know how much you've heard about it, but the lead actress, whose name I forget, but she was a major role in Orange is the New Black.
Amy Poehler, was it?
No, I think Amy Poehler is the executive producer on this show, but
I just saw her name attached to it. I don't know who's who.
Amy Poehler is the reason that I sat down and watched it, but she doesn't have any involvement on the creative side, I believe, but I haven't looked into it. But on the credit, she's an executive producer, written by somebody else. The writing is stellar. It's doing something with a genre cliche trope that we've seen before. We've seen this sci-fi mechanism in action in the past, but it's doing this modern thing where it's pulling away from the mechanics of what's going on and focusing on the humanity and focusing on the emotion and what it means to be living through this process. And I was wrapped the entire way through it. It's really good. I think it's one of the best things I've seen in a while.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. It sounds pretty cool. I've seen a trailer for it, and the trailer looks really good.
I think you would dig it. Although, the thing I would say is the thing we've expressed, I forget what it was in regards to, but I like how you like having your answers. You like having the monster shown.
Yeah.
This might not quite satisfy that craving, but I would urge you to try it anyway.
Yeah. Okay, I will try it. It looks good. It's been on my list because of the trailer. So yeah, and Polar looks good because it basically just scratches that Metal Gear itch. When you look at the trailer, that's kind of what it looks like it's doing.
Okay.
Because it's Mads Mikkelsen with an eye patch looking a little bit snaky. So yeah, I don't know if you've seen anything about Polar.
I have not. No, I was getting a bit confused there because I thought you were talking about Amy Poehler.
No. The show Polar. Yeah.
Okay, right. I haven't heard anything about that, but you mentioned Mads Mikkelsen, so I'll check it out.
Yeah. That looks really good. He's like an assassin that's trying to retire.
Oh, cool.
From what I get from the trailer. So yeah, and it's adapted from a comic, which I should probably read at some point as well. Have you checked any of this out yet, Leon?
No. Russian Doll is on my list. I haven't got around to checking it out yet. I will do soon, as it's quite short.
Yeah.
And I always find Natasha. I can't remember if it's pronounced Leon or Lion, but it's Lyonne. But I've always found her to be quite an interesting actress. She's one of my earliest memories of her showing up in the American Pie series. But yeah, she always picks really interesting projects like the aforementioned Orange is the New Black, and she's been in, if I remember correctly, in the 90s she was in exploitation films, and yeah, she's always picked quite interesting projects. So when I saw her appear on my banner, and I was like, what? Another show? I was sort of like, yeah, I'm interested in this. And then at the same time on Twitter, film and TV Twitter were going on about the show, and I was like, oh, come on, man, stop releasing good shows, Netflix. I've got lots of stuff behind. I'll tell you how far I am behind. I only just finally watched Haunting of Hill House.
Oh man.
Oh, sweet. Okay.
Oh wow, that's a great show.
Which is the show that I was referring to about Greg, needing to know the mystery behind the monster kind of thing. What did you think about it, Leon? What was
I loved it. It was, I guess, because I think I fall more into that camp anyway. Of I'm happy. So when it comes to probably a bad example, but with sci-fi and horror, I like my hard sci-fi and I like my hard lore-based horror, but at the same time I do like when they're used as narrative tools to tell a deeper personal character-driven story.
Yeah.
And that's what this show was. So I was really receptive to that, and I think I think all the actors on it are amazing, young and old, and I think that the set is quite amazing. The Hill House itself, it does pick up on that cliche of being as a character itself, blah blah. But there's some really cool, twisted, and utterly harsh storylines in this show that I really really like. And there's different things there that resonate in different ways because it's a family that has 5 kids, and there's different things, but I'm the oldest of 5 kids, so there's lots of weird links and things that resonate in different ways. And obviously there is the really good writing and direction by Mike Flanagan, who everyone on the internet's spoken about them already, but there's certain episodes here where it's some standout work and great use of editing and camera work. But I really enjoyed it. I've seen some misgivings with the last episode, and I can see some of that in terms of how things wrap up. I guess I'm neither here nor there with it. I could have enjoyed it either way they went. What we got was perfectly fine. It wasn't my favorite part of the season, but what we got was fine. But I don't need to recommend it because everybody in the world has already. But I really enjoyed it.
And we've talked about it on, was it the Sabrina special? I think it was, wasn't it? Yeah. So go back and check out the Sabrina special if you want to hear more. If you want to hear us kind of ramble on about it and me be me and moan about not knowing why the house is like that. I mean, I got over it in the end, but on to the other things that I've been doing. I've been obviously reading some comics over the past couple of weeks, which that's the point. And I read a 3D comic Yes, it came polybagged with a pair of 3D glasses, the blue and red kind. And
Cool.
all of a sudden, I was a 10-year-old kid again, and it was great. Like I missed this when it came out onto the pull list. It was Uncanny X-Men 3D #1, which is a thing that Marvel are doing and are continuing to do. They've reprinted an old issue of Uncanny X-Men, which first of all is great because it's one of the better issues of Uncanny X-Men as well. And second of all, they've reprinted it in 3D. And I may end up picking a couple of these 3D comics up as they come out because they're great. I bought 2 of these. I bought one and kept it poly-wrapped and one that I could read because I'm that kind of person sometimes.
You're that kind of comic book nerd.
Yeah, it's Uncanny X-Men 268 that they've reprinted, and it's basically deals with a little bit of Wolverine's hidden past with Cap and Black Widow, which is Wolverine's kind of like first run-ins with them during World War II. Obviously, Black Widow, she's still a child at that point, but Cap is a soldier, and Wolverine is an angry Canadian. So... yeah, it's a great comic. It's a great issue, and I would recommend reading it. Even if you don't get to read it in 3D, please check it out because it's fucking brilliant. But yeah, no. It's Chris Claremont with Jim Lee and Scott Williams. So it's definitely worth a look. It was Claremont X-Men, by the way, so, can't go wrong. And yeah, it was just good fun to have it in 3D, and I was sitting there reading it in 3D, like, with the duvet wrapped around me because it was freezing, and I had Sophie sat next to me on her laptop, and she knew I was reading comics, but then like she just sort of looked up, and I was sat there in 3D glasses, and I just heard her just sort of start to like kind of laugh, like what kind of thing, and I just sort of looked round, and then she laughs a little bit more at me, and she's like, what, 3D? And like, yeah, it's 3D, it comes with 3D glasses. And then she had a go with it and had a flick through it with the glasses on, and she's like, this is really cool, they should print all comics like this. And I agree, I happen to agree. And it was nice to just have that moment back, like when I was a kid and I had a couple of 3D comics. It was cool. Yeah.
Did you ever consider being that guy who wears the 3D anaglyph glasses around all the time?
I couldn't do that.
You couldn't do that? You couldn't be either like that guy from Twin Peaks or one of the goons from Back to the Future who's always wearing them?
If I had a plastic pair of 3D anaglyph glasses, like, I don't want to wear a paper pair all the time, but if you got me a plastic pair that look, like the ones that Bebop has from TMNT.
That I knew you'd reference TMNT.
Yeah. They're not anaglyph, but they're plastic, like kind of like punk shades, where they're like quite narrow rectangles.
Yeah.
And they're kind of like a visor type shape thing where they go around his eyes and like over his ears. But like, if you could get me a pair like that, like these punk sunglasses, but anaglyph, that'd be amazing.
So I'm just jotting this down. TMNT wraparound anaglyph glasses for Greg's birthday. Cool. Sorted. Got you.
Yeah, they would be really cool. If you get me a pair of Bebop's glasses, that'd be awesome. Yeah, I would wear them. I would. I'm not even joking. I wonder if it's possible actually to get, like prescription anaglyph glasses.
I mean, I don't see why not. They're just regular lenses with coloured tints, right?
Yeah, blue and red. So that would be cool. Prescription anaglyph glasses, because then I just wouldn't even need to like put the paper ones carefully over my normal eyeglasses because my eyes don't work, So that would be awesome. Yeah, so I fully recommend 3D comics, and I recommend this particular issue of Uncanny X-Men because it's cool. Also, on the train of X-Men, there's some hype for Grand Designs because a tweet went out by the artist-writer of Grand Designs, Ed Piskor. He put out a tweet with the cover for the next installment, which is going to be like, I think it's Extinction is the storyline. And I'm hyped for this because I actually have the issue that he based that cover on. And it's an issue of it's like a purple cover with Wolverine on an X-shaped, like he's been crucified, but he's on an X shape, and like obviously, you know, it's looking all moody, and there's a hawk flying in front of the sun or the moon, whatever it's meant to be, and it's just such a badass looking cover. And I put a photo of it up on Twitter actually. If you have a look on the Ace Comicals timeline, you'll be able to find it where I've replied to Ed about the cover, because he was like, you know, I was telling him that I'm actually excited for it, and then I was like, additionally, I actually have the cover that you've based that on, because I was quite proud of the fact that I own that comic. But yeah, it's looking good, and I'm quite hyped for that, so I can't wait to read that. I don't know about you guys, are you looking forward to this next installment of Grand Designs?
Yeah, definitely, considering, like I think I mentioned when we talked about the first issue that came out, like it was... X-Men is something that I've always loved, but always loved in bits. Like, I never really got to watch the cartoon fully. I never really got to read the comics fully. So it is really great to have this, like, unified history put together in one volume. So, totally looking forward to it.
I think Piska is doing a really good job, not just condensing, but sort of rebirthing a lot of these stories in cool ways.
Yeah. I am I'm always, you know, always loved X-Men. I've always been like, as I said, I've got particular arcs. I've never actually like had a full appreciation of X-Men and known the whole thing, which is what this book is doing for me, which is great. And I'm actually like now looking on eBay at like dropping some money on some Chris Claremont Omnibuy because they exist. So you can get like omnibus set of the like entire thing, like Claremont's entire input basically into the X-Men mythos, which would be pretty cool if I could own those. They're not cheap, obviously, but you know, it'd be something nice to have in my big old comic collection. It's just getting the money together to actually, you know, or justifying the amount of money I'd have to spend to get them, basically. More like justification, to be honest, because, yeah, not cheap at all. Do any of you guys have anything like that, any kind of, like, vice, comics-wise, that if you could have it, like, as an omnibus or something, that you would want it like that, in a big hardback?
I think comics is the thing. Like, if I had the space and the money for... like the big collections of all the things that I want to read, whether I'll get to read them in the moment or just like saving them for a rainy day in the future, it would be comics, I think. Or maybe like if you could get Blu-rays for stuff that would never degrade but also advance as technology advances going forward. So imagine if I bought a VHS back in the 90s and today it turned into a Blu-ray, and in 10 years time it turns into a magenta ray or whatever the fuck we have at that point. I would buy that. I would make, if it lasted forever
and it made the Transformers noise when it
I mean, no, I'd put it on mute. But like if it did transform into whatever was the best version at the time, I would buy that.
Oh man. That'd be great. Like it would be like, you know, like when a rocket loses its when they send a shuttle up and it's got like the stage, like a 3-stage rocket or something.
Yeah.
Where they send it off and it loses each bit. It'd be like that, like a VHS splits open to reveal a DVD, and then that DVD you peel part of it off and it's blue underneath or something. You know, it's like
that is fantastic. Yeah. and then the center fills in, and then you've got like this tiny little disc which is 400 terabytes or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
If only planned obsolescence wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
Right.
They're doing it on purpose. We know the numbers. Leon, anything like any particular runs of comics or anything like that that you would like really want to own as an omnibus?
Like physical?
Yeah. So if you could have like a big old hardback that collects an entire work by a certain writer or something like that, what would you want?
See, it's tough in that way because there's not really one thing or one like massive work. Because I kind of like a lot of collected smaller work, and by like a myriad of different writers and artists. There's not like one particular thing where it's like it's not like I want like all of 1,000 issues of Batman in some magical omnibus, because some of those story arcs I don't really care for. So it's a tough question.
Yeah.
I think.
Sorry, go on.
Well, yeah, it's tough because I think if it came with the time to like read the thing, I'd probably do something stupid actually, and like in my magical omnibus, get like a whole run of like some shonen manga,
all of One Piece.
Yeah, and just go for it, because like it would be kind of interesting to have it all in one block and then just dive in head first.
That'd be like one of those. Is it those like enormous dictionaries that you see where it kind of like bends, the spine kind of bends when you open it, and it's
exactly what I was thinking of. I was going to ask Leon if you could get like a really huge leather-bound, like takes up an entire desk version of Y the Last Man. You're telling me you wouldn't want that? Like,
Y the Last Man isn't that long though.
Yeah.
No, but imagine if it was a massive, oversized, like huge tome, like you need a plinth to put it on to be able to read it, like they have like a lectern, like they have at the front of churches.
Pages printed in A1.
Yeah, or like lovingly crafted by hand by, ancient monks, gilded on the edges and everything.
A problem with that is it's annoying to read. Whereas,
but you have an entire building dedicated to the reading of those kind of books.
Yeah,
you
have it's still annoying to read.
And now you've just started a religion. So,
like at least with the shonen manga thing, is that's not really. I don't really gravitate to shonen manga, but just the novelty of having something like all of One Piece in one spot, I would go through the neck damaging thing of having it all on some altar. But like, Y the Last Man, I can enjoy that in like relatively small amounts of volumes, sat in a comfortable chair.
You can imagine you at your One Piece altar giving you One Piece sermons. But like
the good word of the Grand Line.
Yeah, but the problem with having something like a huge like shonen manga thing like that is they'll release a new chapter.
No, they won't.
And then your book
it'll be completed.
Your book will be completed. Yeah, it'll be completed. Then 2 years later, it's like, oh yeah, this lost chapter of One Piece right here.
As long as that lost chapter is in the same format as all the rest of the books, it doesn't have like a different spine, or it doesn't have a like when they do DVDs 5 years later and then they're completely different to the ones you already own. As long as they're consistent, whatever, put it as an addendum at the end, put it in the annals or whatever, it's fine.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, I'm a sucker for like these kind of things. So like I've got a couple already, but I'd love like a big, huge hardback edition, like of. There's actually there's another one that I'm eyeing up at the moment, which is Grant Morrison's Batman. Like, they've got the first volume of it in hardback, and it's enormous. And I kind of feel like I want that to add to my collection as well. Like, I'm building a library, but obviously, constraints of money, time, and being a sensible human being. He doesn't want to wall himself in with books. So,
yeah. Also, you're going to need like kindling for when post March. Heating.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, when Brexit hits,
read a page, crunch it up, throw it on the fire.
When we're living in the post-apocalypse,
old man Greg.
Yeah, wearing
scrunching up comics on his bed.
I've got pauldrons made out of tires, and like clothes made of car parts, kind of thing. Sitting by the fire. Yeah, no, that's just horrible. Ugh. Hopefully it doesn't get that bad. Hopefully. The last little bit of it that I've got left in the bottom of the very small bottle. Yeah.
I really do genuinely hope that it doesn't get so bad that you have to start burning your comic book collection, because what are you going to build your house out of otherwise?
True.
Also, those are load-bearing stacks. Like
exactly. Yeah. It's like in Aladdin, where he goes into the Cave of Wonder, and it's like touch nothing. If you touch something, the whole thing will collapse. It's like that.
You'll be fine. You've got so much comics. You've probably got loads of lesser ones that you can like read, scrunch up, and burn. That will last you a couple of months at least.
Yeah, so there's some stuff there I could probably do that with. So I think you wanted to talk about Spider-Verse a little bit, didn't you, Ray?
I did. I wanted to bring up the fact that it had killed it at the Annie Awards. It won 7 out of the 7 nominations that it was put up for. So it won, if I can quickly run through these, it won for Best Animated Feature, it won for Character Animation in an Animated Feature Production, it won for Character Design in an Animated Feature Production, it won for Directing in an Animated Feature Production, it won for Production Design, it won for Writing, and it won for Editorial. And, like, it's amazing. It won so many things, and deservedly so, up against some really good competition. And I just thought that was worth pointing out.
I'm glad it won, because it was an absolute triumph when I went to see it at the cinema. It was fantastic.
Yeah, like, it for me, it's so heartwarming to watch this film, Thrive and Thrive, because in ways, at least from a box office standpoint, it's just not being in, like, a prime position, really, for a myriad of reasons, to really be getting the box office that it should be getting. And I know that's a stupid thing to say about a film from a multinational corporation, but it's just weird to watch it against some other movies from, like, the last year or so that were just not as good, but because they're coming from the machine and they've got a lot of built-in fans, I feel like a lot of people are going to discover this on Netflix when they really should have been discovering it in the cinema. So it is nice to see the people who like know about this stuff actually giving it its due. And I mean, it's up against some, like, big films from last year, and the fact that award show after award show, critic circle after critic circle, it's like resonating with people to a degree where it's, like, winning these big awards is just really nice to see, and I hope, I know it will have an effect on its longevity, as I think more people will be like, when it's on Blu-ray, I'll check it out. People who might have been put off because the animation style is different, or didn't even really hear about it, or were confused by the story presented in trailers or whatever. I think that it's going to have a really long tail, and as many people have rightly pointed out, it's going to influence a lot of animations coming after it. I think its legacy will be felt for quite a few years.
Yeah, there's going to be, like, whole generations of kids who grow up to become animators and things. It's going to, like, a whole generation of kids even that have been inspired by this fantastic movie. Definitely, and I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out of it, like what has been inspired by it. We might even get some comics inspired by it, you know. Like, I mean, the look of it.
That's begun already. I saw Mitch Gerards. He posted up. I think it was a cover that he did that
for the Flash.
He said was inspired by the movie, and it looked really cool. And it looked like Mitch Gerard's style as well, so it was really cool. So I would love to see, like, it feed back around, and us to get, like, some Spider-Verse inspired comics.
Hey, Marvel, sign Mitch Gerards and get him making Spider-Man books, please.
Great.
So, you said the magic word, Leon, when you were talking before about Spider-Verse. Do you know what that magic word was?
Verse.
No, you said Netflix. do you know what's on Netflix? Riverdale's on Netflix.
I see where you're going. Let's keep riding this train.
Yeah. And do you know what the first comic we're actually going to review today is? It's called Blossom's 666. And it's Cheryl dialed up to 11, I think, actually.
I mean, Cheryl starts at 11, so maybe Cheryl on 666.
Yeah.
You guys are biased, though. Like, you're already in love with Cheryl.
Oh, she's great. She's so extra. It's fantastic. This comic is peak Cheryl Blossom. Peak Cheryl Blossom. And it is called Blossom's 666. So I'm just going to read the blurb off the back because it never fails to make me laugh. Cheryl and Jason Blossom are a pair of seemingly normal kids in Riverdale. They're wealthy, popular, and likeable, but they also harbour a deep, dark secret. One of the Blossom twins is the Antichrist.
Sold. Why haven't I read this yet?
It's just that line alone. Both want the title, and no one in Riverdale is safe. So, the first thing you've got to know about this book is, it is dripping in that B-movie horror sense of humour, that teen slasher movie charm, and it's just so of that kind of like pedigree, like that is its family tree. It's great for that. So yeah, we've got these two red-headed murder teens, for want of a better word, and they've decided they're going to have a party, and I think through this party they've decided they're going to decide which one of them is the Antichrist. And issue 1 is just like a really great build-up, setting the scene, setting the tension and things like that. And what I also really like that this does in the writing is it kind of normalizes the Satanism stuff. So, you know, how do I put this? I guess the best way I can think of to describe this, being a Dungeons and Dragons guy, is lawful evil. So, evil to the point where you are just the exact opposite of good, but you still obey the law. You still serve tea and biscuits to people when they come to your house. Kind of like Sabrina's aunts are in the Sabrina TV show, the Netflix show.
Particularly Zelda.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But they're like, Cheryl's parents in this are like lawful evil, and it's like Satanism's normal for them, and it's just a normal thing that they do, go down into the basement and have dark rituals and shit. And that's really good because that appeals to my sense of humor as well, you know, the fact that this is just all totally normal. And yeah, it's just like such a good fun comic. And if you like that teen slasher stuff, if you're into that genre, then this is for you, like 100%. It's total B-movie, like, oh my god, it's like, yeah, it's B-movie umami. Yeah, B-movie MSG. It's great. Now, one of the other things that I noticed, first things that I noticed about this book as well, is the likenesses in the character designs that they've taken from the Riverdale TV show. I don't know if you spotted that, did you, Leon?
Oh, I'd spot it. It coloured how I read the issue.
Yeah, exactly.
Because pretty much everybody had the voices that they have in the show.
Yeah.
And the thing that's really cool with like Laura Braga's artwork is that they have the likenesses, but they're also still quite original in a way.
Yeah.
It's like...
it's like at certain angles. Like when faces are at certain angles, you can see it. But otherwise, no. Yeah.
Well, yeah, so what happens is that it ends up not being like a parody or even like the Riverdale comics that are based on the TV show where they look exactly how they look.
Yeah.
With this, it has this cool sort of look where it's still like comic booky, for lack of a better term. So it's sort of this middle space between the TV show and the comics, and I think that's a really good choice because it means that it doesn't just become like the TV show like spin-off type feel, but instead it gives you something to connect with because the TV show is quite big, but also it allows you to sort of divorce some characteristics from the TV show because there's some differences to how these characters act. It's like in the TV show, everyone's pretty like good to some degree, and I think in this comic it starts to bring back some of the character dynamics from the comic book.
Yeah, like it's of the comic book universe, definitely.
Where, I'm flicking through this right now, and I feel like it's got this like stylized, extrapolated perfection of everybody, like as if the actors weren't, you know, perfect enough in that show. But yeah, it's got that thing where it's like the idealized, picturesque version of them, like printed onto paper.
Yeah, and like Laura Braga's art, it is just absolutely gorgeous. It's like this beautifully highlighted art with like a chalky texture, and like everything looks like it's lined in charcoal. Like she's done the lines with like a piece of charcoal, and it's great. And you've got like this beautiful cartoon bounce to everything, which I think Leon was talking about, and he's saying that everything's cartoon, but at the same time you can actually, you know, you can see that, like, yeah, this is like this is based on the actors and actresses from the TV show, which makes it even better.
I like that. I like that Cheryl's hair kind of lives in a heightened reality from the rest of the comic.
Yeah. I think like Matt Herms does really good work there because it's so striking. It's kind of like in an anime way where like hair color and stuff like dictates sort of spells out personality traits and stuff like that. I think it works in that way, like paired with like her like signature red lipstick. Yeah, it's really cool.
Like it's literally more vibrant than anything else in the comic. Yeah, like skimming through it, it's on a different like plane of brightness. Yeah, than everything else. It's really cool.
But I think that's the point.
Yeah.
Because even if you notice, if you've ever watched an episode of Riverdale TV show, like Cheryl stands out, like she's like had LEDs glued to her or something, you know,
larger than life.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just that kind of character, and it's great. And yeah, it's just so much charm in this comic, and the horror element is great. If you like your teen slasher stuff, it's fantastic. And
I think it doesn't really waste any time. It sort of wears what it's doing on its sleeve. So there's mystery still, but as you said, there's like satanic cult stuff quite early on, and like it gets to like a dark place quite quickly, which is really good. And there's a lot of iconography that's going to play out, like to do with apples and the way different colors are used, and like there's like heavy like theming going on, and obviously. The color red is so important, especially in this issue. It's used in very striking ways and at very particular striking times. Yeah. So there's a direction of intent from panel to panel, which takes what is like essentially like a fluffy sort of what if story and makes it quite an enjoyable ride where you want to check out the rabbit hole. You're not entirely sure if you want to see how deep it goes, but you want to dip your toe into the rabbit hole and see what's going on. And as Rahul said earlier, it's like maybe I'm biased, but yeah, I'm happy to see Cheryl be doing the most, and she's very much doing the most in this book.
The last page is amazing. That's what I'm gonna say. Yeah,
it's a very Greg last page.
Yeah, I've got two covers of this comic. I bought two covers. I bought the first cover A, which is Cheryl and Jason. Cheryl's wearing a red hood.
I think that's the Laura Braga.
Yeah, the Laura Braga cover. Yeah,
it is. Yeah,
yeah, and I've got I've also got the Francesco Francavilla cover.
Which, that one's quite cool.
Yeah,
I like the Robert Hack cover.
Oh man, I wish I could get the Robert Hack cover. Robert Hack is the guy who did the art on the Sabrina comics.
Oh right, yeah. Chilling Adventures.
Yeah, Sabrina. Yeah, that's Robert Hack. And I really wanted that cover, but I couldn't get it. So I got this one, the Laura Braga one, and I've got the Francesco Francavilla one, which is red with kind of like a dark red 666 kind of imposed over it, and it's just kind of like Jason and Cheryl's faces. But they look really kind of like, I don't know, murder-teeny. They've got like bags under their eyes and stuff, like dark rings around their eyes and things. It's looking pretty cool. But yeah, it is a very cool comic. So I should run through the full list of credits. We've got a story by Cullen Bunn, which was one of my main reasons for picking it up, actually, because this guy can write. Art by Laura Braga, lettering by Jack Morelli, colouring by Matt Herms, editor-in-chief Victor Gorlick, creative consultant Shannon Goldwater, publisher John Goldwater. And we've got variant covers by Joe Eismer, Francesco Francavilla, Robert Hack, and Vic Malhotra. But that Robert Hack cover is gorgeous. And if I could have got me one of those, I would have wanted one of those. And I think there's an advert in the back of this for... I'm just going to double check. It just made me laugh when I saw the advert. Oh, no, it must have been somewhere else that I saw it. But it might have been in the back of the latest Vampironica, actually. But they're doing Vampironica versus Jughead, The Hunger. So it's like Vampire Veronica versus Werewolf Jughead, I think.
You stole my fanfiction. That sounds so good.
I think that's what they're doing. I will double check and confirm that though, because I'm sure I saw that advert. I'm sure it wasn't a fever dream, but yeah, I will double check and confirm that. But yeah, that was Blossoms 666 #1, which is like the latest instalment of RG Horror, and boy is it great. Moving on from there, I've got a couple more horror comics that I picked up. Now, these are part of the Marvel 80th anniversary celebrations that are happening, where they're kind of like releasing... they were releasing old... Like, they brought back old titles from the history of Marvel Comics, and they're releasing them with new stories in and such. The first thing that strikes me about that is the fact... I mean, we talked about this in episode 54, that I talked about these two on the pull list. So the thing that strikes me about it is how close 80 is to 100. If you think about that, it's like 20 years, and we're going to have seen 100 years of Marvel Comics, and it will happen within our lifetime. Like, think about that, guys.
I don't want to think about when I'm going to be 53, Greg.
Well, no, but it's incredible to think about, isn't it?
It is incredible. Like we're going to be old men when we get to celebrate the centennial of Marvel. That's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, we're not even going to be. We're going to be in our 50s, so we're still going to be, like we're not going to be that old. We're not going to be like eating through a straw or anything. But it's just think about that. That's incredible that within my lifetime, I'm going to get to see 100 years of Marvel Comics. I think that's pretty cool. Like. And that's something that kind of struck me as like 80 years, so there's only another 20 years. Like, well, I've lived 20 years and it didn't feel that long. So, but I just thought it was kind of cool. So the first of the two that I'm going to talk about is Journey into Unknown Worlds. So I'm going to start by reading the blurb and credits. So there's a blurb written on the inside of this book, on the inside cover. And it goes as follows. Now, I got a variant cover of this. It kind of looks like a Japanese movie poster for the first story in the book. And it's like a kind of like a 1970s style painted... it's like a woman in like a hazmat suit, but then the hazmat suit has cracked and her face underneath it has cracked and smashed as well, like glass, and then there's like bones and things coming through. And then you've got the earth behind it, and it's got like the title in Japanese below, and it looks really cool. So the blurb, there are some who say that this book should not exist, that the fantastical flights of fancy contained herein are too much for the human brain to comprehend, that to gaze upon these weird worlds would wreck the fragile human constitution, as it tries and fails to comprehend these surreal adventures. For these tales of suspense are enough to cause hearts to race, minds to melt, and skeptics to wonder. Are you prepared to step into the strange? To face the bizarre? To meet the monsters beyond your wildest imaginations? I sure hope so, true believer, for you are about to embark on a journey into unknown worlds. Yes. So the first of the two stories in here that I want to talk about is it's the Cullen Bunn story, and it is called Bones of the Earth. Now, so that like the full credits for this one, it is written by Cullen Bunn and artist is Guillermo Sana, and I think Lee Luffridge colours this one and the other story, because we only got one colorist mentioned, and it seems to be kind of below both sets of credits. So that's Lee Luffridge. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but it looks that way when the way the credits are laid out in the book. And we've got VC's Travis Lanham as the letterer, and I believe he letters both comics as well, both stories. So in this first story, it's like I absolutely loved how this played out, and I don't want to talk too much about the plot because like it's very difficult to talk about the plot to this one without spoiling it. But there's been an event of some kind, and we join a group of people in hazmat suits searching for a previous team that have been to the area. And at the same time, they're also taking readings to try and figure out what happened and what this event even is, because all everyone knows is that something's happened. They just don't know what. And there's some really cool ideas in this story, and the art in there is absolutely fantastic. There's some really fantastic depictions of contortion and pain on people's faces, and the way that bodies twist and things in this story, like when X happens, is really cool. And it's good classic feeling pulpy sci-fi short horror story, and it's got the it's got the twist. Even though it's only a very short story, it's got the essential twist. It's got everything that you would expect from that type of story as an homage to these tales of old, these comics of old. It does really well for that. And it was my favorite of the two. Now the second tale is this is called Chrysalis. And this was Clay McLeod Chapman and Francesco Manna. Clay McLeod Chapman writer, Francesco Manna is the artist. And this one was kind of cool. It has some interesting monster designs and an interesting underlying commentary on toxic masculinity. This one is like weird sci-fi horror with a comedic edge. So the first one was just like sci-fi horror with a twist. This is weird sci-fi horror with a comedic edge and also a twist, and kind of leans into the weird bit a little more than the first one does. And again, it feels very much like a good classic short sci-fi tale. The book as a whole serves as a really cool celebration, and it's a shame it's only a one-shot, as you know. It's the same for the second one I'm about to talk about after this, actually, because I would really love if this would come back and they would get like a regular, even if it's just like every 2 months or something, like version of it with two stories in by an art, like different artist writer teams. Because I think I would love an anthology like this. I think it would be really cool. So the second one that I'm going to talk about that I picked up in this Ace Comicals impromptu Fright Fest double feature, this one is Crypt of Shadows #1. And this one, I liked this one. I mean, I loved them both, but I like this one better than Journey into Unknown Worlds, actually. So I will just get you the blurb and credits for this one. Now, for this one, I picked up a variant cover again, and it's a variant cover that makes it look a lot like a classic horror comic. So it's like one of those classic, I would say, 1970s Marvel horror books. Which is kind of like, because Crypt of Shadows is a classic Marvel horror book, but this is like, they've made it look like that with this cover. This variant cover is like very of that style, very of that time, which I really like. It's got a guy with like a speech bubble. Oh no, let go of me. And there's some dogs kind of like chasing him out of a crypt, and there's a shadow of a woman kind of like gesturing like enter the crypt kind of thing. And these dogs are like chasing him, and they're looking pretty angry, like red eyes, like big teeth, like trying to drag him back into the crypt. And he looks terrified, and it's fantastic. There's also like the creepy Crypt of Shadows font, Marvel Comics Group's banner across the top, which is like something that you see on old Marvel comics. And like even down to like the way they've put like the price on it and everything else is great. What nameless evil lurks in the Crypt of Shadows? So, the blurb for this one: you shouldn't be here. This is a place for the dead, for the damned, for the unholy. You should not be here, and yet you cannot stay away. There is something within this land of buried dead, a power dark and sinister, a knowledge potent and corrupt, that pulls you in deeper, deeper, past the old gate, down the winding passageways, cutting through hills pockmarked with tombstones so old they're barely legible. At the end of the path stands a building, its stone facade cracked and broken by time. What is that name carved above this haunting mausoleum's heavy metal door? Why, it is yours, dear reader. The undeniable gravitation of the inky darkness pulls you in. You should not be here, and now you cannot leave the Crypt of Shadows. So, as you can probably tell, I got quite excited about this. So, it's like this is a really well-polished nod to pre-code and 70s horror comics. This book is very psychological rather than supernatural, and it is a damn good story to read in the dead of night, in dead silence, with nothing but a desk lamp. It is that kind of story. And I knew this was going to be something special when I saw a tweet by the colorist. And I will read through the full list of credits for this now. So, full list of credits on this book, we have writer Al Ewing. For the first part of the story, Cynophobia, we have Gary Brown as the artist. Second part of the story, Grave Errors, Stephen Green is the artist. And then third part of the story, A Moment of Madness, it's Jabril Morissette Fan is the artist, and I hope I've said your name correctly. If I've not, I am very sorry. Colorist for the book is Chris O'Halloran, and VC's Travis Lanham is our letterer. So Chris O'Halloran's the guy from Ice Cream Man. He's the colorist from Ice Cream Man. That's how we know him on Ace Comicals, and we follow him on Twitter. And he tweeted out the first page of this book, which is I loved the way this page worked. It's like the opening page of the book, and the words on the page are Cynophobia, fear of dogs. And it's a 9-panel grid with vicious snarling dogs in angry dark red hues, snarling all across the page, lettered across the page in borders in each row, like top and bottom of panels, like in rows across. And then it's like these dogs have like these burning bright yellow eyes, and at the centre we've just got a woman speaking the words in ordinary daylight, and our eyes are drawn to the centre, almost like we're being addressed directly as sufferers of cynophobia, and like our fear and thoughts are creating kind of tunnel vision around the world in front of us, and it's always there on like the feeling that if you're scared of something, if you're that petrified of something, if you have like such an irrational fear, that it's always there on the periphery. And I think that's what this page does well, because it focuses you into the center and puts this ring of dogs on the periphery, and it's like you're almost always able to see it and almost able to experience the fear because they're there around the edge. And that was me gone. That was like hook, line and sinker with the growls on the page, and you could always cool. you could pretty much hear it happening, and that was me done. As soon as I saw that tweet, that was me done. It was like insta buy. I was like, I'll have that. Got onto Facebook, and I messaged my LCS and was like, can you save me a coffee please, thank you. So the book is divided into 3 sections. It's one story divided into 3 sections, which I've just mentioned. The 3 sections of the story are, I'll read them again actually, Cynophobia, Grave Errors, and A Moment of Madness. The artwork is stellar throughout, and the writing is like pretty perfect. It's like jigsaw pieces of this grim painting just sort of like slowly fall into place. And the narration and the overall feel of the book, like, I think they definitely nailed it as an homage to old horror comics. Like, I think I've mentioned before on this cast that I've made it a thing of mine to go back and read old horror comics, where I've been doing it because I'm interested in those stories. And I've got like I picked up a few old horror comics, and I've been going back through them and reading them, like some collections and things. And I'm impressed at how well this kind of like celebrates that. There are some fantastic moments in this book, and I think it builds tension really well. It's an A-star horror story, and I don't want to talk too much about what happens in there because I will spoil it, but that first page is an indication of the quality of the entire book, I'd say. So yeah, go out and buy that. And the other one. Ray, you should read both of them.
But you've sold me on both of those because of how passionately you talked about them. So yeah,
they are both absolutely great and worth your time, 100%. So from there, this is something else that's something old that's been made new. This is something we all read, isn't it? This is the new Buffy the Vampire Slayer comics. It's Buffy the Vampire Slayer #1, published by Boom Comics. Now, this is like a reimagining of Buffy for the modern age, and I just want to open this up by saying that it's, like, aside from the characters and aside from almost the way things play out, but almost not the way things play out. Aside from, I don't even know if the events aren't the same, but similar things happen. And it's nothing like, apart from that, it's kind of like nothing like the old Buffy TV show. And for me, this is a good thing. I don't know what you guys think, because I feel like, especially season 1, has aged terribly. When I rewatched the first episode this weekend, I was like, wow. I don't know whether you two agree with me on this, because you both read this as well, right?
Read it, but I think of the three of us, Leon is the biggest fan of Buffy and has the biggest knowledge of that, because I certainly didn't. I grew up liking Buffy and knowing it, but I think, like so many things that I've talked about in the past, I got it in pieces, never really got to watch any of the seasons fully through. So, Leon, I think you should jump in on this first, and then I'll give my perspective.
Well, yeah, I'd say the book is does an interesting thing, because I thought maybe it was going to be like new characters or be like a more stock reimagining of the series. But what it seems like is a reboot in the classic sense, where you're sticking with the location, characters, and the sort of story and the world. But as Greg said, it seems to be set now. There's smartphones, and I assume there's going to be references to modern things. But they've changed the dynamics of a few things in quite an interesting way. Because, as alluded to, I'm quite a big fan of the '97 Buffy the Vampire Slayer TV series. It was created by Josh Whedon. I think over the course of that show, I think it's quite an important show in several ways. I think it was really instrumental in sort of ushering in a sort of genre, a like serial-based genre show with like a not just a female lead, but also like set in a school. And I think what it managed to do over its seasons was really groundbreaking in some ways, in terms of story, in terms of season structure, in terms of just the way certain things played out. And I think a lot of that has had a big influence on things that have come after it. I think a lot of shows of all different types were inspired by Whedon and Co.'s take on that particular formula. And I think what this show does, or what the new book does, is that it sort of recasts things in a intriguing way. I'm interested to see where it goes, because during the course of this first issue, it sets up some of the normal stakes, no pun intended, where it's set in the school. Buffy's sort of like an outsider whose dad is from LA, and she has Giles, her watcher, and the Watchers. If anybody doesn't know at this stage, the Watchers are like basically guidance, and as said in the book, like a coach for each Slayer. And there's one Slayer, one each generation. They fight demons and vampires, and it seems to be set quite early in her training, so it does feel like sort of early, like season 1 territory. But what it does here, it sort of changes the relationship that she has between her main friends, Xander and Willow, but also her interaction with the world at whole. They introduce a character who appears quite later in the show into this first issue, which is a very interesting wrinkle. And there's a location which is used in the later seasons, which is brought to this first issue. So it's kind of like a remix. And I think part of the question is, why not just use all new characters, blah, 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 blah. And then another counter question is, why not recast these characters? At this point, it's become its own like universe, the Buffyverse, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And it's become its own thing. So it kind of stands by itself where, yeah, we're super aware that Sarah Michelle Gellar played the character, but I think in ways it's sort of she's connected to the character in terms of likeness, in the sense that you can't just draw Han Solo not looking like Harrison Ford. Yeah. But at the same time, it's not really books or stories are not really held down by it having to be Harrison Ford, if you know what I mean. Yeah. Instead, it's like he's created this character, him and the writers and everybody's created this character, and it's lived on. And it's kind of interesting to see them do it with Buffy, especially because at the moment, a reboot where they change up the characters is in the works at 20th Century Fox.
Yes,
probably
that was
later in the year.
SDCC last year, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
So it'll be interesting to see how that will be, and I'm happy that is not one of these, say, like Gilmore Girls or Twin Peaks things where everybody comes back. I'm glad that it is sort of a fresh, fresh take on it. But at the same time, I think it's cool that we've got this comic which has these characters as they are, because they, again, like with the Riverdale bit, these characters look like the actors who played them for the most part. Yeah. And I think that's it's actually quite cool because it sort of transcend the actors and become the characters themselves. So I think what it does effectively is that it doesn't get, at least at this point, too bogged down in the Whedon-esque or Mutant Enemy style of dialogue, which I'm always a fan of unrealistic dialogue. A lot of my favourite films and TV shows have unrealistic dialogue where everybody sort of speaks in a belabored, snarky, cool way that people don't really speak. I love that. I know some people absolutely hate it, but I love that. And there's shades of that here, but it doesn't go nuts with that. Yeah, it doesn't lean on that too much. Yeah. Instead, it lays it down as like character building. So I'm interested to see where they go further than going forward. And like I can understand. I think it very possibly will be a stronger start because, like, Buffy the Vampire Slayer is one of my favorite TV shows of all time. And I think it's one of the first TV shows where it got me into being interested in the craft of storytelling on TV in that manner, and like big serial storytelling, season by season, having a big bad, having different things happen, and how to lay out. And it was the first big one that I got into, and it like sort of inspired a curiosity into how TV is constructed.
It's the first. Sorry, I was going to say it's the first one I remember actually as well, where people would talk about it at school, season by season, because obviously it was one of those things where, like, at the age I was when it came out, people could watch Buffy, but they probably weren't allowed to watch things like X-Files and stuff. So it kind of had like that. This is like people would talk about it at school season by season and would be like, oh, in season this X happens, in season this X happens, or whatever, you know, and it would be like that kind of thing where it's like my first experience with that kind of TV show.
Yeah, and like I've always felt that the first season was the weakest, and I think in part because I think it was finding its footing, deciding what show it wanted to be, but also it was a mid-season replacement, and it like a shorter season than the rest of them. Yeah. There's a lot of things where it feels the most '90s hokey of them all.
Yeah.
But like, I feel like as soon as they hit season 2,
yeah,
the show sort of hit its stride, and there's even early on some really smart, cool episodes.
I think that's what hit me when I went back and watched episode 1, because I went back expecting cheese, but I wasn't expecting Stilton. Like this was some pretty stinky Stilton. But I mean, you know, it was still fun. But I wouldn't. Well, I'm telling you guys now. I'm telling the world because I'm recording on a podcast. I probably wouldn't want to tell anyone. I went back and rewatched it. No, yeah, it was all right. But I mean, yeah, I mean, Leon. I'm pretty sure Leon was just reading my notes, to be honest. So, but I love how they use the likenesses of the original actors and character designs in this book. I mean, I don't need to read. I don't think I need to tell you what happens in this book, because like you all know what Buffy the Vampire Slayer is. I'm pretty sure everyone who is like kind of comics adjacent or whatever, or you know, anyone who's ever like, most people, like Buffy is just like known pop culture now. Like a lot of people just know what Buffy the Vampire Slayer is, because it's one of those things that was it was that kind of everywhere, that everyone kind of knew. And it's just something that I think everyone has at least seen the title before, you know, if nothing else, or heard the title theme before. It's just, you know, I think it was on terrestrial for a while, wasn't it?
Yeah, on BBC Two.
BBC Two, yeah. I was thinking Channel 4, but yeah, BBC Two. And it's like, yeah, I love how they use the likeness of the original actors and the character designs of the book, and there's just enough taken from the original cast members to put that kind of edge on it, like Leon was saying, in the same way we see with Blossom's 666. It works and it looks great. I love this new updated version of Buffy, and it builds on the messages of the original, and it just feels clearer and a bit more proud of those messages than the original did for me. And Buffy feels more badass in these pages than she does on the TV show in the bits that I've seen. Like the bits that I've been back and rewatched, like memory-wise.
Yeah, I guess as well, there's like over 2 decades of like visual storytelling, but also a cultural shift in how we're able to about what we can do now off the bat.
Yeah,
and I think that there's a lot of things that a lot of good TV shows at the time, even with good intentions, sort of had to tread water on a lot, or like the people who were making them, weren't in the place to even consider doing a lot of things. And I think a benefit of doing this story now is that where things ended up in the show, where for better or worse, I think the show was quite early on very good at normalizing queer characters, but also like a queer relationship that isn't like a focal point because of its queerness. And I think that while revolutionary at the time, that's not revolutionary now. But what is better now is that it would just be a representational thing. Whereas, like, it wasn't a statement in the show back then, but now it would be a sort of less a statement and more about, even more so, just normalizing what the world looks like. And I think that was one of the vectors where, like, the show Buffy was pretty decent with as it got there, season 4 onwards. Whereas I think another vector that Buffy wasn't good at, that I'd like to see probably attempted and done better in the comic, was like race. I think like there's a handful of like non-white characters, and they just weren't written particularly well, or their storylines weren't that great. And that was very much, you could feel like it being a blind spot of the people involved. And I think that, I mean, the creators have even admitted that. I mean, Whedon himself has. But I think that now we're in a position where our teen fantasy or even our teen shows, this stuff is old hat now. So it bodes well for the types of things they can explore in the book that would have been a kind of, we got a nudge to the edge, or we got to speak in allegory about this thing, and now they can save the allegory for more dense issues, and for things like this, it's a different color in the canvas. It's just a different factor of a different person. So
it's just part of the greater picture, as it should be.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of potential to do some interesting things in this show, and there's a lot of like in the seasons that come, the show did a lot of really smart and interesting things, and it'd be cool to see those remixed and also like evolved upon. Yeah, so I think there's a lot of potential in what the book can do.
And as you'd probably expect from a comic of this type and a story of this type, like the story and the pacing is great. There's some deftly handled action sequences in this comic, and they just flow and leap off the page. The art has this like impression of fantastic, unique awareness that it is indeed a comic about characters immortalized by a TV show, if that makes sense. So it's like this like fantastic, unique awareness that this book has, that it is a comic of an old TV show, like New Game Plus, like Buffy New Game Plus. Do you think does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like you can already see sort of the just in terms of panel construction. Yeah. You can already see how this is a sort of late 20-teens book, contrasted with like even the Buffy season 8 comics of like 15 years ago or so. Just some panels here where they're very cinematic, and the different panels are moved by in a more sort like modern style, where the passing of information is a lot clearer, but also a lot zippier, and even more so, there's a lot of intent in the construction of different panels.
Yeah, and it has a sense of humor as well.
I mean, it always did.
Yeah, but like this, like that comes through really well in the way that in the artwork in this book. Like the art has a sense of humor. It's like it's got this clean and cartoon edge, like overall to all of it. And I guess the main point that I want people to take away from this is, even if you're not familiar with Buffy, it's great because it's like, it feels fresh. It's a good introduction. It's a great invite into the world. It's a really good ground floor point for anyone that likes action, horror, or supernatural stories. It's like, it's just a way in, and it's just like a new, fresh ground floor for what I think is actually a really cool story. And like I was saying, the TV show is quite kind of dated. So yeah.
Well, I think I'm going to have to put a footprint into the cement you've just laid down, because I think I'm a bit more, or quite a lot more, lukewarm on this book than you guys seem to be. Yeah. Definitely don't hate it, but like I think your New Game Plus analogy is kind of apt, because the whole thing about New Game Plus is you have to have gone through it all before for the New Game Plus to have meant anything. And I haven't gone through Buffy all before. I think I know the broad strokes. I know how important it was in the grand context of television. I think Buffy is one of those shows where I learned about it more than I experienced it. So I learned about it secondhand through my friends talking about it, or you know, from learning how influential it was on talking about certain gender politics, for example, and all the things that you and Leon have just discussed. But for me, coming into it essentially fresh, I feel like I'm missing out on I feel like there's an inside joke happening in this comic that I'm not attuned to, because I'm not picking up on the references, or I'm not picking up on how it's a mirror to the old Buffy, and therefore it's coming across as lesser to me. So like there's little things like how Leon was saying, like it edges towards that what could be annoying dialogue, but it never really was, because you're enjoying it in the original show. I think for me, listening to somebody like Xander's dialogue, who I know who Xander is as a character, I know him almost inside out based on like the spoken Wikipedia version of who that guy is, as opposed to having listened to 500 hours of his character. I find his dialogue in this comic to be quite irritating, because I think I'm seeing like a 2D flattened version of who he's supposed to be, because I've been semi-influenced by the TV show and not fully influenced by it the way you guys have. And it's...
But yeah, I'd also back that point up from a different angle. So for me, Xander was my least favorite. I mean, early on in the show, I wasn't even a fan of the character in the OG show to begin with.
Well, I was going to say, I think he's meant to be kind of irritating anyway, at least definitely at the start of the show, right?
But like my point is, his dialogue for me. So for you, it comes off as like grating, whereas you don't have the original basis. Whereas with me, who has the original basis, he comes off the most uncanny valley, where it's like it's meant to be Xander, but it's too much a weird parody. Or it's
Xander Volume 11.
It's not even Volume 11. It's like a copy of Xander.
Yeah, it's the opposite of what you were talking about with Blossom 666, where that feels like larger than life, and it feels like a fun and like thoughtful caricature of the real life actors. Whereas I think this is, as you say, the parody of the character that's existing, and it doesn't quite know how to handle the weight of that history. Maybe.
Yeah. I don't know if I would go that far, but I mean. I enjoyed it for what it was, and I'm like somewhere between you and Leon, Ray, as far as Buffy experience goes. Like I'm like less than Leon, but probably slightly more than you.
Right.
Somewhere in the middle, but like, it's just. I didn't have that kind of problem with it, to be honest. I thought I didn't his dialogue didn't bother me, because I was just like, oh, that's just Xander, isn't it? It's just what he is.
Okay, so that's one relatively minor point. Like if I get onto the artwork and how it matches the likenesses of the actors who played them in the show to begin with, I think that also removes me a step from the book, because I want to fall into this with fresh eyes, and it's not allowing me to do that, because all I can see is like Alison Hannigan and Sarah Michelle Gellar in the background, which isn't inherently a bad thing. It's not working for me, and I wonder if part of this is just my personal reaction to hearing how much you guys, especially Leon, appreciates it, and I'm just not getting it, and I feel like I'm on the outside of it, and maybe that's me pushing back against it harder than it needs to be.
Is this Buffy as a whole, you mean?
No, specifically this comic book, I think, because what this makes me want to do is go back and watch Buffy, really. And the reason I'm torn is because of all the things you guys have just said about how it can rework on some of the things that it did really well and was like progressive for the time, and the things that it didn't do so well and has the opportunity to do better now in a fresh, revamped, revitalized setting. And that's the reason I think I'd keep going on with this comic, because I want to see what it does with that. But as an issue one, it didn't super grab me.
I would say from my point of view, because like I think the way it tallies up with how we've been speaking about it is that Greg prefers this to the TV show. I think this has got potential to remix things in a 2019 way, and you're sort of not on either train yet, with like potential to see that what it could do. And I think that's the thing with this book. I think there's a lot of potential in it, and I'm pleasantly surprised at how not a train wreck it is, whereas I think it's super gear working for Greg, because like there's things in here where I can totally see that. I can totally see the ellipses where they're not stark. There is definitely ellipses of like, this is a recasting of this thing, but as you said, like you're not in on the joke, and there are some connections between the characters and story where they are sort of skipping over, because they, as you like find out later on when you read like the editorial staff talking about how much they love the book, they're all fans. And I think part of that has worked where they've done, here's a remix of that song you like, instead of like, here's a cover version of that song you like by this new band.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I mean, the way I view it is the fact that it's like, it's a retelling of that story, but it's aware of where it comes from, and it's very aware of where it comes from. And rather than being put off by that, I'm kind of into that. I kind of like that.
I think put off is a bit strong. So let me renormalize what I'm trying to say here, because I think the remix 2019 thing that you're saying, Leon, that's what I'm hoping for. But I will wait until you confirm whether it achieves that or not to actually fully dive into this book. Yeah. But I'm not. It's certainly not something that I'm saying isn't worth anybody's time, or even anybody who's in my position's kind of time. It hasn't grabbed me. And I'm willing to hear back from more informed voices to say whether this is worth it or not. I'm not going to be able to make that consideration for myself. Or, in the meantime, before, issues 2, 3, 4, 5 come out, maybe I'll catch up on original TV Buffy, because I've always wanted to, and it kind of revitalized that for me.
Yeah, it's a good bit of escapism for me anyway. That's how I feel about it.
So. I am never going to argue about you watching... one of the best shows ever made.
Oh, gee. That episode I watched on Sunday. I can still taste it.
I think it's unanimously agreed upon that season 1 is pretty crap compared to the rest of it. And it only gets better, right? As far as I'm aware.
Yeah. The thing is, there's stuff that happens that is part of, like, TV pop culture now that show did before anyone else. And, like, one of the wildest things this show does, like, the level of genius this show is like in one of its weaker seasons by my metric, season 7, a season where the main creator and showrunner is busy doing Firefly, and he has Angel on the go as well. At the same time, they managed to do the much talked about Once More Feeling musical episode. But it isn't just this side, let's sing some songs, blah, blah, and the story stalls in the background. Like, it's so instrumental into every single character's, character progression, the main arc of the season, what's happened before, the way it ends is, like, it completely changes how every character relates to each other from that episode onwards. Yeah. Like, they just did that. They just dropped that. They just dropped that, like a musical episode that is integral to the show. Like
Riverdale pulls those kind of shenanigans twice a season.
You say that though, but the Riverdale musical episode is just them dancing around singing songs. It's fun. I love to see all my favourite characters do all the silly stuff, but it's not the same. The thematic connections are just not the same at all. Yeah. And like many other show has done a musical episode since then to varying degrees of success. But most of the time, it is this sideshow thing where it's like, let's sing some songs to get the themes out of what we're talking about this episode. And in Riverdale's case, it was kind of like covers of that particular musical to sort of kind of talk about how they're feeling at the same time, and it was fun enough. But I cannot underestimate, or I cannot lower down how smart that show is. And I know it's like the most talked about episode of the show, and everyone and their mum's spoken about it and blah blah, and it's mega old hat now, it's so old. But when you get there watching the show, you will still be sort of knocked back at how capital G genius it is. I don't think it can be overstated.
Yeah. I think we've gone over this before, but like that's the reason I have like the Wikipedia, like video game guide version of knowing this show intimately, because I haven't lived through it, but I've read the articles, like I know exactly why it's so instrumental, and that's I'm looking forward to that, and I want to see those moments transported into a new context in this comic. And again, I'm going to wait for somebody else to tell me that it is all there, and I'll catch up on it.
I didn't expect this comic to be such a point of conversation for us guys, but there we go. It has been well,
I can see how, because I think it touches with a lot of things happening now. Where we're in a culture where in a pop culture where our sort of childhoods and teens are being repackaged and sold to us as whole in various different machinations. And there's a lot of headbutting with that, and whether we're getting cash grabbed through nostalgia, or whether these things are actually truly transformative, and by being transported to now, if they've got something meaningful to say.
See, I don't think this is just repackaging and selling back to us, because I feel like this is trying to bring new fans on board. That was the other point I was going to make. Because the comic itself is called Welcome Back to Hellmouth, but Welcome Back to the Hellmouth is the title of this comic, but the first episode of Buffy is just called Welcome to the Hellmouth, and they could have just gone with the title of the first episode as far as I'm concerned, because of how the comic functions and the fact that it has something for old fans but has a lot to give to new fans as well, in my opinion. And I think it's a great example of how to keep something fresh and update something.
I will say, I think before reading this and still after reading it, I'm still more excited to see what happens with the TV show.
Yeah, the TV show sounds really interesting, what they're doing with that. Like, when I read little bits and pieces about it, it sounds cool.
If I can end on a positive note about the comic, two things. There's a reference to Serenity on a TV. That's kind of cool.
I don't like that.
I kind of like it.
That breaks the universe.
No. It makes me roll my eyes, but it's that, of the many things that made me roll my eyes or cringe or whatever, it's one of the things that made me roll my eyes and smile at the same time. And especially with the second one I'm going to say, where it's Xander going, "Grr, R," which is like the end title of the TV show. I hate it, but I like it at the same time. Made my eyes roll, but I was smiling at the same time. So those two things.
So that was Buffy the Vampire Slayer #1, and I guess we should run through the list of credits. So, created by Joss Whedon, and I think he's had some kind of oversight over this whole project. Written by Jordi Belair, coloured by Raul Angelo, illustrated by Dan Mora, and lettered by Ed Dukesha. So there we go, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, available on Boom Comics. And as far as I'm concerned, it's got something for old fans and new fans, and I think if you're looking for a vampire action story, then this is the comic you would go to, because I think it's good. So this brings me on to the last thing that I wanted to talk about, which is because Ghostbusters is 35 years old this year. So I've been going back through reading a lot of Ghostbusters comics, being the massive Ghostbusters fan I am, sitting here talking to you on the podcast wearing Ghostbusters baseball cap. In the build up to the 35th anniversary of Ghostbusters, which I think is June this year, and the GB Comics 35 event, which is due to happen this spring. So, they're doing, Ghostbusters 35, celebration of 35 years of Ghostbusters in the comics. And there's, an event coming out this spring that IDW are doing that I'm so looking forward to that. I recently picked up a couple of omnibuy of the real Ghostbusters comics published by Now Comics back in the late 80s and early 90s. Now, I have vague memories of these comics from being a kid and seeing them at school, because, I don't know if this is something that's universal across all childhoods, but, when we were at school, if it was chucking it down, you weren't allowed to go outside. And they would make you sit in the classrooms during break times, like lunch break and break time, morning break, or recess, as the Americans call it. And you would have to entertain yourself in the classroom, and they would have a stack of dusty old board games or construction toys or that kind of stuff, locked away in a cupboard for just these events, like the way people keep tins of food in case the apocalypse happens or Brexit. It was chucking it down and we couldn't go outside, and I remember there being this old stack of comics in one of the cupboards in the classroom, and they had a couple of real Ghostbusters comics mixed in with this stack, and it was something that's my first experience with them, and it was cool having these and being, I would sit and read them when we weren't allowed outside, and being a huge fan of real Ghostbusters, I mean, these books were a purchase waiting to happen anyway. I finally went ahead and did it earlier this year. I was like, you know what? After Christmas I was like, I'm going to have these because I've wanted them for a while, and they're not expensive for the amount of comics I'm getting in there anyway, because there's like 28 issues across 2 volumes, and I think I paid something like 35 quid for both, which wasn't bad. Maybe a bit less than that, I don't know. Yeah, they just like the 2 volumes that I've got collect the entirety of the first volume of comics, and that's like 28 issues, which is really nice. And it is 28 issues of a great fun comic that I feel traps the spirit of the real Ghostbusters cartoon exceptionally well. No one's laughing at my pun.
Say it again.
Traps the spirit.
Okay.
Yeah. I thought I was being well clever. Anyway.
Sorry, Greg.
You were until you brought it up.
Yeah, I'm laughing now.
I know that when I said it, Leon like bit into his desk or something because it was that bad. But yeah. And like, I just these comics are great. They capture what the real Ghostbusters was like in a really, really great way, and the work that they did with this property at Now and the quality of the comics they were putting out was just fantastic, and it shows. And these comics feel like lost episodes of the TV show. I even went as far as running an experiment because I've got the score from the real Ghostbusters cartoon, and I tried to score the comics. So I was sitting there with my MP3 player on at work in my lunch break, and I've got the real Ghostbusters score on my phone, and when certain points in the comic came up when I was reading it, I would play certain pieces of music from the score, and I was like, this matches in tone perfectly because I can apply the score from the TV show to it, and it doesn't feel out of place, it doesn't feel wrong, it feels great. And that was like seriously impressed me that I was able to do that with this comic, and that it felt that kind of in tune with like what the real Ghostbusters is, because as a cartoon, I feel that it's very unique, and it has a very unique formula, and it does some very unique things as far as kids shows go. And a kids horror show, I was always impressed with it, and I was impressed with these comics big time. It was a great fan moment for me to be able to successfully score the comic using the original music, and like how well the tone matches in terms of writing and characterization. Like Egon, Peter, and Ray and Winston are all completely spot on, and the humor works brilliantly. My favorite story that I've read so far is Ghost Gangsters. My favorite moment so far is issue 1. It has a great moment with Peter Venkman in a nightmare werewolf high school. And it's just this fantastic page where everyone's transformed into werewolves, and Pete's there on his own, and these werewolves are talking to him, and they're like, well, what are you waiting for? Time to change. And he's like, no, I just never went in for that style. The unisex look never played well on me. Like, obviously making gags about 80s fashion. And then the werewolf teacher's there going, a nonconformist, that's not what high school is for. High school is to crush your spirit, strangle your creativity, fill you with self-doubt, and turn you into mindless consumers. And then Pete Venkman's like, wow, this is just like my old school, my old high school, except for all the teeth and claws. Sorry, I've got to run, but I'm late for my exobiology class. And then they start chasing him, trying to make him change. And I really liked that page, especially that 4-panel sequence of this teacher like on a rant, this werewolf teacher. I thought that was really cool. And I like specifically enjoyed that page there because I thought that was brilliant, and that's the kind of thing that I would have on my wall framed because I liked it, and it sort of like basically encapsulates how I felt about school when I was at high school. So yeah, I thought that was cool, and I think these RGB comics are really good, and you should probably check them out if you want to go back and read some old Ghostbusters comics. Now, there's very little like by way of like, because I mean these are all list of credits would be huge because obviously like different stories, different artists, different writers across the whole run, but like I can tell you for my favorite tale so far, the Writer is Lamorris Richmond, penciler Evan Dorkin, inkers Ken Stacy and Andrew Pratt, colorist Ken Stacy and Andrew Pratt, letters by Andrew Pratt, and editor Tony Caputo. And that is front cover artist Ken Stacy and Andrew Pratt. And that is the Ghost Gangsters comic, which the gist of it is a news reporter is doing a report about a historical rivalry between two dead mob bosses, and they're about to open one of the vaults that one of these mob bosses has left behind, and eventually there is a ghost of gangsters returned to have revenge, and the Ghostbusters have to clean up the mess. And it's a really cool story. I like that one, and it left it on a cliffhanger. There was a really good cliffhanger at the end of that one, and as far as I can tell, we don't ever get a resolution, which is kind of annoying, but at the same time, it's a really awesome comic, so I was really into that one. And yeah, that is the Now Comics Real Ghostbusters omnibuses that I bought, which are amazing. So, guys, anybody else got anything else they wanted to bring up and mention?
Yes.
Yep, go ahead.
But it's only tangentially related to comic.
Go for it.
So you see how we're reading a Buffy comic
Yeah.
in 2019, the year of our Lord?
Yeah.
I feel like I've regressed to a teen in some ways because I'm reading a Buffy comic.
Yeah.
Resident Evil 2 is out again. Kingdom Hearts is back in the public sphere.
Yeah.
And I went and saw a Dragon Ball movie at the cinema.
Oh yeah.
Wait, that never happened when you were a teen. We were
No,
down.
I wanted it to happen.
We were watching dirty bootlegs of Dragon Ball movies when we were that age.
What are you saying about Cartoon Network?
Oh yeah, that too. Yeah.
But yeah, I saw the Dragon Ball Super Broly movie at the BFI IMAX, which is a sentence that I've said a few times over this last week and a half, and it still doesn't make any sense. But it was really cool. I went with my brother, and yeah, we sat there and watched Goku, Vegeta, and all the squad battle out on the big screen, and it was really cool. For people that don't know, Dragon Ball Z is this thing that you should just Google because I just can't explain it. But basically, it's a shonen manga series that became a long-running anime series, and again, it was another thing that's been revived a few years ago. I think it was 2015.
It's a perfect example of exponential escalation, is what Dragon Ball Z is.
And this movie is the first movie of this. It's not the first. It's the third movie of the Super series, and I think it's it's the first one that's done the ridiculous business that it's done so far. For 3 weeks of this year, it was the second highest grossing movie worldwide.
Wow.
Which makes no sense to me.
Damn. But yeah.
But it's a really fun cultural moment, and it really. I mean, I haven't been watching Dragon Ball Super, but I picked up stuff by osmosis, by friends into it, by memes, and by playing the game that came out last January.
I've watched all of Super. Shaggy is the strongest character.
And that's going to be so dated when people listen to this episode in 2 years. But it's funny not keeping up with it, but it's still having the core of what I really enjoyed. And I think the movie is made in a really knowing way, and it's directed by Tetsuya Nagamine, and it's written by Akira Toriyama, who's the creator of Dragon Ball. And I think it does a thing in a really cool way, not in the same way, but in a similar sense to the Serenity movie, which was mentioned before, which was the movie of Firefly. And what that movie did, it was released in the cinema by Universal, and they had to hedge their bets. Josh Whedon, who's writing the script, had to hedge his bets on creating something that wouldn't be tedious to reintroduce everybody for people who had watched the show, but also that would be clear enough to bring on all newcomers. And I think in Serenity, he does that really ingeniously. And I'm going to put a small little addendum here, because there's been a lot of Joss Whedon praise, but obviously in recent, not just in recent years, I mean, for the last 20 or so years, there's been various things that you can read up on the internet which point towards bad decision making and bad character in certain things, but relating to his work specifically, there's like traits of well-meaning but bad theming and characterization, which sort of dog throughout his work. And obviously a big fan of his work, but all that stuff is there, and it's something to be mindful of. But yeah, I think the Dragon Ball movie, it does a good job of pretty much catching you up in a way, because in some ways it's a prequel to the whole show. Like Dragon Ball is like a prequel to all of it, which sets up what happens later on in the film. And the character Broly, he was a non-canon character who was in the original movies, which came out during the run of Dragon Ball Z, the anime. Yeah. But all those movies were non-canon. They were like, or most of them were non-canon, and they were sort of played out. They're kind of like what ifs, or like the Marvel, the Marvel runs of comics of like, what if Wolverine versus, I don't know.
They were kind of one-shotty. You could place them on a timeline, but they were like one-shotty. Like you didn't.
Yeah, because they weren't exactly like DC Elseworlds, but they were more in that Marvel what if style, where it's like, what if Jean Grey killed all the X-Men type thing.
I don't think they were even that extreme as a what if, because they just kind of like out of timeline stories.
Yeah, they're out of timeline stories, but some of them are ridiculous, like Broly himself, who's just this non-character, mega powerful person who we've never ever heard before. And I think what this show does well is bringing him into the canon, and giving him some backstory and character. I think it's really deft. I think it's handled really well, and it got me up into the show, into the film, and I was there. I was on board, and it was really fun just being in a cinema with other people who have obviously grown up with the show in various different ways, and all of us just to enjoy this spectacle of IMAX Dragon Ball. And one of the wildest things is, so when you go to the BFI IMAX, before the movie, one of the members of staff who usually sits in the auditorium to like be there if anyone needs any help or anything, and mostly to probably stop people trying to illegally record, they give a little intro at the beginning, and they'll give some like a tiny bit of backstory on the film you're about to watch, and say, blah, blah, welcome to the thing, it was created by this person in this year. And it's just so weird to have that over this not even like Studio Ghibli or something like that, but like Dragon Ball. Like, and the member of staff is talking about like, created by Akira Toriyama and blah, blah. So like, what is this? This is cool.
Yeah, you kind of expect that kind of pomp and pretentiousness from a Christopher Nolan film, but not necessarily this, right?
Yeah.
Did it ignore the Bio Broly stuff?
Yeah, none of that stuff is canon.
Is it actually 70mm IMAX?
No, so it wasn't. So it wasn't. What happens usually when you see, like, say you were to go to the cinema and watch Fast and the Furious at the IMAX. So those are optimized for IMAX, where they're. I'm not going to go into super technical what they do, but they basically like blow it up and fit it into a frame that fills up more of the screen. But it's not the ratio of it's not the ratio of something shot or edited in IMAX, but also secondly, it doesn't have it doesn't go by the standards of what would make something IMAX. So it's not true IMAX, and instead it's not quite LIMAX, where it's digital. But the best way to describe it and how they describe it is optimized to fit the screen. So I saw like Avatar, the James Cameron movie. I saw that in the IMAX, and obviously that's not shot in IMAX, but the way it was done, it was optimized in a way that shots fit that square frame more. So when you saw shots of like the mother tree, I've since watched that film again on Blu-ray, and the shots don't look as spectacular because you're using the normal anamorphic like widescreen frame. Mm-hmm. So there are differences made in the presentation, and I think that happens from film to film. But yeah, it's not like they broadcast it out on IMAX projectors or anything like that.
Yeah.
Okay. That would have been ridiculous. I don't think my eyes would have been ready for that.
Yeah, because like 70mm IMAX Dragon Ball would be incredible.
Yes.
I don't even know how you would do that.
I still have yet to see this film. I still need to go and see it, but I'm looking forward to getting round to seeing it. And I think that brings us on to the pull list, doesn't it?
Sure.
Yeah. So this is things that are going to be available on the 6th of February and also the 13th of February. So these are all things for you to look forward to over the next 2 weeks. So on the release of this episode, I'll open, we have Daredevil #1, which is a new Daredevil run, which I mentioned earlier in the show, which will have Chip Zdarsky's name attached to it, which I'm kind of excited for. We also have Female Furies #1, which this is Big Barda and co. All their lives, the Female Furies have been raised to be the meanest, most cunning and most ruthless fighting force on all of Apocalypse. So why are Granny Goodness's girls left behind every time the men go to war? With the might of New Genesis hanging over the planet and the Forever People making mincemeat out of Darkseid's army, Granny thinks it's about time that changed. And so Big Barda, Aurelie, Mad Harriet, Lashina, Bernadette and Stomper set out to beat the boys at their own game. Little do they know, the game is rigged, and one accidental murder could spell disaster for them all. Female Furies is an exciting new miniseries starring some of Jack Kirby's coolest Fourth World characters, by the writer of Shade the Changing Girl and the artist of Plastic Man. So we've got creators Cecile Castellucci is the writer, and Adriana Melo is the artist. We've got a cover by Mitch Gerrards and a variant cover by Francesco Mattina. So I figured that one might be something that you guys would like, having read Mr. Miracle quite recently. We also have These Savage Shores #3. I think comes out on this week, doesn't it? On the 6th of February, which is something that we reviewed on the previous episode. So go back and check out episode number 54 and give yourself a reason to buy These Savage Shores. On the 13th of February, actually no, you go first, Ray, for the 6th. I'm skipping. Go ahead.
No, it's cool. I only have one for the 6th. It's one of my staples. It's Giant Days, number 47. Daisy gets her driving license. That sounds great. So I'm going to read that.
Yes. For the 13th, I've got Detective Comics 998 as we inch ever closer to that 1000th issue. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #91. And Savage Sword of Conan #1, which is another new Conan series. So we've talked about Conan before on previous episodes of Ace Comicals, or I've talked about Conan, and I will continue to talk about Conan because I love Conan. But this is Savage Sword of Conan #1. This is like another Marvel, another relaunch of another Marvel Conan title, which is something that I'm quite excited about. The ancient cult of Koga Thun, a mystical treasure and the only man who can save the Hyborian Age. Adrift at sea, no food, no weapons, death surely awaits him, but the lion-hearted Conan is not so easily subdued by Crom, and when Conan finds himself captured, he unleashes his might on an unsuspecting pirate crew, one whose dark secrets will plunge Conan on the trail of an ancient treasure that may prove to be his undoing. And it's all new age of Savage Sword of Conan, and it begins with a 5-part tale of swords and sorcery by Jerry Duggan of Deadpool and Infinity Wars. Illustrated by legendary artist Rob Garney of Daredevil and Thor God of Thunder. With covers by the incomparable Alec Ross and breathtaking variant covers by Garney, Raza, comics legend George Perez, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles co-creator Kevin Eastman. So I'm looking out for that Eastman cover. But yeah, Savage Sword of Conan. In fact, see if we've got a picture of the Kevin Eastman one. Yes, there it is. It's in black and white, and it's absolutely gorgeous. Hyper detailed Conan versus a bunch of skeletons in armor, with like the rain coming down and some dust and some bits and detritus, all things that Kevin Eastman's very good at. So yeah, Savage Sword of Conan. I'm liking the look of that. Ray, where are we with you for the 13th of February?
As before, only one, and it's another staple, Ms. Marvel number 38, and it'll be celebrating its 5th year on the shelves, so it should be a good issue.
Ooh, indeed. Yes.
Yeah, and also the Mr. Miracle trade paperback will be out on the 13th of Feb, I think, I hope. So I'll probably pick that up too, because even though I have all of the floppies, it would be nice to have it as a giant leather-bound collected tome, right?
Indeed, yes, get a hardback. Leon, anything for you to add to the pull list at all?
No, for me, the focus will be on the Mr. Miracle trade. Been waiting for it to come out as an excuse to go back and relitigate the run, and to have a more in-depth talk about it. Maybe a bit of a spoiler section as well with you guys. Yeah,
definitely. That's something that I've been planning on doing for a while, actually, as well. Go back through all 12 issues, and we can kind of like have it out on here in full. Because I think that was one of our favourite things of last year, and possibly 2017 it started, didn't it? So, yeah, it was one of our favourite things.
Yeah, it was definitely my favourite of 2017.
Yeah. Definitely one of my favourite things. Yeah, Tom King can write. So that will close us out. So that has been Ace Comicals episode number 55. You can find us on at www.acecomicals.com. You can find us on iTunes under Ace Comicals. You can find us on Facebook under Ace Comicals. You can find us on Twitter under Ace Comicals, and you can ask us questions, send us silly scenarios to make sense of whatever you want via Twitter DM, or you can email us to acecomicals@gmail.com. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, and Castro. We're kind of everywhere. You can find us on Instagram under Ace Comicals. You can find us on Facebook under Ace Comicals. Have I already mentioned that? I don't know. It's a long list of places you can find us. You can find me on Facebook under @Batto. That's BATTOU. Ray, where can we find you? Twitter. Sorry, Twitter under @Batto. Ray, where I'm getting myself in a like some kind of twister now. Ray, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Moonke, MOONKEH.
Yes, and Leon, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Leon Everett.
Yes, so that has been Ace Comicals episode number 55. So Ace Comicals, over and out.